Good evening, everyone. Today is November 4th, 2025, and this meeting of the Lake Oswego City Council is now called to order. Ms. Ona, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Buck.
Here.
Councilors Windland. Here. Burdick.
Here.
Corrigan. Here. Councilor Raff is excused. Councilors Afghan.
Here.
Maboop.
Here. Thank you very much. Everyone, will you please stand and join us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands. Thank you, everyone. So November is National Native American Heritage Month, which is a time to celebrate the cultures, languages, and histories of Native American, Alaskan Native, Native Hawaiian, and affiliated island communities. The city of Lake Oswego honors the ancestral lands of the Clackamas, Chinook, Clowalla, Tualatin, Molalla, Multnomah, Siletz, and Kalapuya peoples. These indigenous communities have stewarded this region for generations. This proclamation acknowledges the federal trust, responsibility, and moral obligation of the United States to uphold commitments to tribal nations. It also recognizes the enduring contributions of indigenous people to the nation's cultural fabric, environmental stewardship, and shared history. The city of Lake Oswego reaffirms its commitment to honoring tribal sovereignty, fostering mutual respect and understanding, and promoting a community where indigenous voices are recognized and celebrated. We'll have a copy of our Native American Heritage Month proclamation on the city website. Okay, next on our agenda is public comment. If you are here to provide public comment and have not already done so, please just fill out one of the white forms on the back table. But we have two folks signed up. Sherry Dupuy, you are first. Welcome. Come on forward, and if you just restate your name for us before you begin, that'd be great.
I'm Sherry Dupuy. I want to publicly appreciate Eric Olson's way of visioning housing production. He's going beyond the minimum required by law by using aspirational language on inclusion as a North Star for his team. I attended the meeting where Eric invited a speaker from Fair Housing Council of Oregon, and I appreciated the history lesson. History gives us ideas about how people in the past have dealt with similar circumstances, and seeing patterns helps the team make better decisions. I moved to LO in 2017 and knew nothing of the city, but I immediately loved it. Then I was taken aback when I went to Portland and met two people who said they would never step foot in LO because of the discrimination they had received from the police here. So I wanted to know more about my city and started going to these council meetings and to respond to racism. And I've been amazed at the strides that LO has made in becoming more inclusive. A member of the West Linn Alliance recently told me that Black families are moving here from West Linn because we're more inclusive. Now, when I hear people disparage us outside of the city, I truthfully can say the things that we're doing and be proud. I hope that LO will be a place where it is unsafe to be racist. I'm happy when I see these incremental steps like I see Eric making. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dupuy. We appreciate those comments. Abby Rollins. Good evening. If you could also please restate your name before you begin.
I'm Abby Rollins. I have been a Lake Oswego resident since 2013 with my family. My kids are a sophomore at Lake Ridge High School and a fifth grader at River Grove Elementary. Both of my kids also swim competitively for the Lake Oswego Swim Club. And I'm here to talk about our lane availability and time usage at Low Rack. We've been impacted definitely since we left the high school pool and moved to Low Rack with less available time in the pool and less number of lanes, since 6 lanes are reserved for the community in the competition pool. Some of the impacts have been that we have had to move most of our squads to Lewis and Clark. So even though a lot of our families live here right close to Low Rack, we have to drive our kids up to Lewis and Clark. Our club serves 255 kids. 92% of them are Lake Oswego residents. So that's 234 kids and their families that have been impacted. We've also had to cut our practice times by 33%. My daughter used to have a 90-minute practice. Now it's 60, so we can get our kids all in the pool at Lewis and Clark. Sometimes there's more than 8 kids per lane, which is not as effective when you're training and kids are trying to avoid each other swimming down the lane. And our young kids are sometimes not finishing with practice until 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. Parents having to get them home and showered and fed and to bed for school the next day. In addition, there's other families that have been impacted. We haven't been able to take any new swimmers on the club this year. So we've had people that have moved to the area with kids who've swam elsewhere, wanted to join the club. We haven't been able to accept them. We also have kids that have completed the swim lesson program at Low Rack and have wanted to continue swimming, and we haven't been able to add those kids. We have over 60 kids on the wait list right now who would like to join the club and swim and compete for LO. In the afternoons, when we have been at Low Rack, there's very low usage of the 6 community lanes for lap swimming. So, it really would make a significant positive impact to these 234 kids and families, plus potentially some we could take from the wait list if we could expand pool time or even just lane usage during those times that Lake Oswego Swim Club already has pool time there. So that's what I'm here to ask the council to evaluate the usage and potentially expand that so we can make it fair for all of our kids in Lake Oswego.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Rollins. I appreciate your comments. Would anyone else like to provide public comment? No? Okay. Then we are going to move on to the consent agenda. We just have one item on the consent agenda this evening. That's the approval of meeting minutes from September 2nd and 16th. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Councilor. Motion made by Councilor Boop and seconded by Councilor Corrigan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. All right, moving on to council business. Our first item this evening, item 8.1, is consideration of Resolution 25-45. I'll invite our Sustainability Program Manager, Amanda Watson, to come forward. We're going to be looking at the 2026 solid waste and recycling rates. And you'll remember we had a study session on this at the last meeting. Hi, Ms. Watson. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Amanda Watson, the Sustainability Program Manager. I do have just a very quick update for you on this item. So we last spoke on October 7th and discussed the staff recommendations and council direction for the rate adjustment. So as a reminder, we're not making an overall rate increase or adjustment this year for Republic Services garbage and recycling collection rates, just a few targeted updates. One of those targeted updates was changing the structure of our bulky waste rates. And there was a draft rate sheet that illustrated the recommended bulky waste rates in the packet for your study session. That draft sheet did not include an hourly handling fee. And after additional discussion with Republic Services, after the study session, we do need to include the hourly handling fee that was on our previous rate sheet. So I'm here just to flag that for you all. The resolution before you includes the 2026 rates, and it does have that hourly handling fee and a description of when that would be used. So it's a little bit more specific than it was on our current 2025 rate sheet, but it's the same. It's $114 an hour and charged based on 15-minute increments for particular actions that aren't otherwise covered by our rates. So I just really wanted to provide that quick update for you and for the public, that uses these services from Republic Services. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Watson? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 25-45?
I move to adopt Resolution 2545.
Second that.
All right. The motion's been made by Councilor Windland and seconded by Councilor Afghan. Is there any further discussion? All right. Let's take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. I did see, Republic had talked to us about these electric garbage trucks a while back, and I saw one today. Very close up because it almost ran me over, but it was really moving. But I believe it was because it was very quiet. It was
great
very
to
cool.
hear.
I'm surprised it. Oh, you're here. Was that an electric truck? It was running. Yeah, it was running real fast. But it was good to see. It's good to see. No, thank you. Thanks, Amanda.
Great to hear.
Okay. All right, next item of business is consideration of Ordinance 2972. This is adopting the Community Health and Resiliency Advisory Board charge statement. We have our two co-chairs of, yes, Betty here?
One co-chair.
Okay, one
Betty's not here
co-chair.
tonight. You only
Ms.
have
Linda
me.
Roundtree.
Okay, Linda Roundtree.
Great to
yes.
have you here. And
Thank you.
Your solo performance.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Thank you for having me here this evening. I'm the co-chair of the new Community Health and Resilience Advisory Board. Of CRAB, as some people call it. I have a short presentation to talk about adopting our new charge statement. As you guys know, this is a new advisory board. It was formed from the 50+ and kind of converted into a little broader mission of overall community health and resilience, which includes emergency preparedness. The committee began meeting in July, and we took the draft statement from the mayor and the city council about what this new committee is going to do. And so we've been working on that. In September, we worked together. We had several very productive meetings and came up with a charge statement that we have put forward to you, hoping you will accept. Once we have that, then we'll get to work with seeing what's going to come next. So you should have a copy of the charge statement, but if for the record, and make sure you've read it, I'm going to read through it quickly. There's only 4 things, right? So A, advise the city council on strategies to strengthen the community's ability to prepare for, withstand, and recover from emergencies. B, provide recommendations to the city council on ways to foster community health and well-being through policies, programs, and partnerships that respect individual choices while providing support for social connectedness and equitable access to community resources. That took us a long time. C, advise the city council on effective approaches to inform and engage residents about emergency management and community health resources. And finally, to provide recommendations for city events, policies, and programs that strengthen community resiliency and health, such as preparedness fairs, wellness initiatives, and opportunities that build neighborhood connections. So I'm hoping that the council will approve our charge statement. And so unless you have any questions, I hope you'll adopt it. And
Thank you very much.
it's a big mission, yeah.
Yes, you and the advisory board did a great job working through this. Councilor Afghan is the liaison
Yes.
to the board. I'll ask if he has any comments to make.
I think the new group did an awesome job in looking at what does the city need as opposed to just what we gave them and they would follow it. So there were a lot of good discussions about, let's unpack this, tie it back to the city council goals, and make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. There are, if you read those 4 bullets, it's constantly says we're advising the city council. So the decision still comes here for implementation, but these are the advisory board roles and responsibility. I have one question for the co-chair. Who is your absolutely awesome city councilor representative on your team right now?
I wonder who that could be. Councilor Afghan.
How often does he
And you
appear
were very
in person?
important. You contributed a lot to our discussions. Thank you very much.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Winland.
I have a question. Is he good enough to ask him back for next year? No, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to, I'm the liaison for the chamber, and just in your thoughts and planning, the chamber is working on health fairs, or a health fair, and I think there could be some great collaboration between the city and the chamber on those going forward, to try to bring health and the whole. I love your statements, and I think you guys went through and improved what we said, which is always the best part of the public process, is making things better. And I think that could be a good connection. And the great thing is our assistant city manager, Milan, is on the chamber board, and she's a great connection to that. So make sure you use her as a resource when you get into the whole health preparedness, because I know that's a big part of our community. So.
Yeah, she's already helped us a lot, so.
But I know she has. She's always wonderful.
We, you and Betty are doing a great job as the co-chairs, and the board as a whole is very impressive and well-rounded with respect to the charge, of this board. And of course, this is a brand new advisory board this year. I want to, thank Ms. Phelan and Ms. Bigelow for their help in putting it together, and now the board for taking that initial work and amplifying it further. And we want to ensure the good success. This is an incredibly important topic, but a very wide topic. And I know we want to, the city council wants to be working closely with you to ensure that this group is productive and is able to advance the issues it sees as most pressing in the community. So thank you very much, and good work to the board. Would someone like to make a motion to enact Ordinance 2972?
Move to enact Ordinance 2972.
Second.
All right, thank you. A motion was made by Councillor Afghan and seconded by Councillor Corrigan. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Mr. Andre, thank you very much. Good work. All right, we're next going to now move into a public hearing. We have Mr. Olson, Long Range Planning Manager. This is a consideration of Ordinance 2967. This is the Fair Housing Policy and Education, LU 25-0001. Before you arrived, Mr. Olson, and your boss, Director Numanalu, Ms. Dupuy, had very nice comments to make about the good work you're doing with respect to this particular topic. So you'll have to watch that back.
Yes, thank you. I actually was viewing from my desk
you were.
downstairs, so I very appreciate those comments. It's always good to know that your work is impacting people in a positive way, although I could in no way take sole credit for the housing work that the city's doing. But, yeah, so I guess with that said, oh, yes.
I'm
point of
sorry.
order.
Yes, it's a
Should
public
I-
hearing. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'll just very
Thank you.
quickly, since we have already had someone publicly testify, so this is a little bit for you, ma'am, but also for members of the public. Now is the time set for our hearing, our public hearing on Ordinance 2967, as the mayor said. This is a legislative decision. It's generally a policy decision that is within your sound discretion. We're going to start with a presentation by staff. Testimony will then be received from the public if you wish to testify again. It's subject to the time limits that are set forth in the agenda. And now I'll ask, as I do in every legislative matter, and pause briefly for the answer. If there are any financial conflicts of interest for counselors, please say so now. Hearing none, we're ready for the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are here to consider a proposal to amend the comprehensive plan that's being put forth by the city to establish affirmatively furthering fair housing as city policy. So of course, we've had a few study sessions here at the City Council related to this, at least one relatively recently. And we provided you with an overview of fair housing and affirmatively furthering fair housing. Actually, you heard an overview from a representative from the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. So this is just a little bit of a summary of what was presented to you at that study session. A reminder that the Fair Housing Act has been around since 1968. It was passed during the Civil Rights era. It was intended to protect individuals in protected classes from housing discrimination. Specifically, those include the protected classes you see on the slide. I'll just say them really quickly because I know, it's helpful to at least say them out loud once, but I don't expect that you to just absorb this, but these are really important classes for us to have in our heads, of course. Race, color, national origin, religion, disability, sexual orientation, sex, and that includes pregnancy, gender identity, age, and marital status are all protected from, those classes, I should say, are protected from housing discrimination. So affirmatively furthering fair housing is, as you might assume, a more proactive approach to fair housing that was also included in the original 1968 Fair Housing Act. Essentially, this prohibits land use regulations, restrictive covenants, or other sort of special permits or conditional use permits that would limit housing choice based on protected class status. So really, it establishes this idea of disparate impact, that land use decisions and practices may not result in a disparate impact on a group of persons or create, increase, reinforce, or perpetuate segregation in housing based on that class status. So really not just looking at the intent of a law, but also looking at the actual outcomes and how those impact these different classes is kind of the idea here with disparate impact. It also means that we should really think about where housing is located when we consider land use actions here at the city. The idea is to really try to look at patterns of segregation and think about how our work as a city could work to break up those patterns and really unearth new ways of developing and new patterns of development that would sort of negate that previous development. Negate the segregation, rather. In terms of how this policy is applied or how the affirmatively fair housing is specifically applied in Oregon, in addition to the federal provisions, there are also a number of state laws that implement affirmatively furthering fair housing here in Oregon, and they go further than the federal provisions. Of course, we have statewide planning goal 10, which is just a general statewide planning rule that we've had since the 70s or 80s that require producing adequate quantities and types of housing that meet the actual needs of current and future residents. It requires us to make sure that that is central to every land use decision that a jurisdiction makes. So really, this has been around for quite a while. Obviously, we're familiar with more recent legislative progress at the state level from the past 5 years or so, specifically House Bill 2001 and 2003, where we were required to complete a housing needs analysis and develop a housing production strategy. Really, this is a central component of how the state is implementing affirmatively furthering fair housing within the state. So not only do we have a housing production strategy and an HNA that are intended to meet fair and equitable housing outcomes as required by the state, but we do have a strategy within the HPS that we adopted that also kind of considers this fair and equitable housing outcome criterion and how we can amend our comprehensive plan to sort of have a policy specifically as a city that would be consistent with and parallel to the policy at the state level. So as you can see here, and as I know you're all familiar with, we included this as one of the strategies in the housing production strategy that was adopted at the end of last year. This is strategy number 13. As you can see, there are two components to this strategy. One would relate to policy, which is what we're here to discuss today. The other would relate to education, which is something we envision to be more of an ongoing effort that would be completed by the end of 2028. The policy initiative, though, the adoption specifically of a comprehensive plan amendment to enact affirmatively furthering fair housing as a city policy was envisioned to be completed in the short term by 2026. So, this is one of the relatively light, I suppose, workload-related strategies within the housing production strategy. So we're wanting to try to address this in 2025 a little bit early so that we can dedicate a little bit more of our time to other strategies as we move forward. So just a few notes, we will eventually be required to conduct a larger study to, really it's called an analysis of impediments to fair housing. That's something that we'd identified as something we could be taking on as part of the educational component for this strategy. We have since learned that it will actually be required as a part of the housing needs analysis, specifically the contextualized housing needs assessment, the next time we do our housing needs analysis in 2029. So there's really no need for us to take that on proactively unless we really want to do it before then. We will be required to do that eventually. So on the educational side of things, other things we could do and were considered in the HPS include conducting fair housing trainings, providing access to fair housing information to those that are involved with real estate transactions, and really educating the city staff about how to identify potential violations with respect to fair housing and make referrals accordingly. Just a little bit more from the housing production strategy here. The idea is that this will formalize and demonstrate the city's commitment to fair housing goals and help to facilitate really a better understanding of fair housing issues in the community. We don't really anticipate any burdens on priority populations with this action. However, we do anticipate it will have a relatively low magnitude of impact. It won't necessarily directly contribute to housing production, but it does establish a policy that we will be weighing all of our future actions against that will help us to assess the ability of that particular action to advance equitable housing outcomes. So it's something that we will continue to come back to and look at and judge ourselves against as we continue to implement the housing production strategy. So we understand that this is going to potentially have a limited impact in the short term, but we do expect that in the longer term, the fair housing impact will be greater, and particularly in sort of spreading awareness. So on this slide, you can see really we're talking about a single sentence addition to the comprehensive plan. It's fairly low impact approach here to the comprehensive plan amendment. We're proposing to add a policy to the housing choice and affordability section of the complete neighborhoods and housing chapter of the comprehensive plan. You can see that would be policy B5. And that is to employ strategies to affirmatively further fair housing by fostering inclusive communities, overcoming disparities in access to community amenities, and enhancing housing choice for populations including, but not limited to, people in classes protected under state and federal fair housing regulations. So that's the specific language we're proposing to add to the comprehensive plan. That's really, the long and short of it. I don't have too much else to talk about with you all today, other than what the next steps would be. Of course, those educational efforts are something we envisioned continuing through 2028 and likely beyond. So that's, something that will not cease if these comprehensive plan amendments are adopted. And ideally, if things are approved, we would then consider findings at the next council meeting on November 18th. And that concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Olson. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Olson? Councilor Wendland.
Thank you for lobbing up the easy one. Can you, off the top of your head, I'm fully supportive of implementing this, but do we have any examples of land use changes in LO that we would make to conform to this policy?
This isn't necessarily looking at, spurring actions in and of itself. I think it's more just something that we would need to consider with any land use action that the city or a private applicant is proposing. So we're not necessarily saying this policy will lead to us doing X, X, and X in the future, although that could come to pass, I guess. The idea is really more, okay, we're looking at potentially a new zoning district and potentially a neighborhood of the city located over by the river. When we're analyzing that in a staff report and looking at the sort of pros and cons and whether it complies with applicable policies, we will also have an opportunity to assess really the ability of that action to further fair housing. So, in a broad sense. So it's really a lens that we will be using for proposed actions in the future. One of many, obviously, policies in the comprehensive plan that we have to comply with.
Okay. I mean, I guess it's, that one sentence we're changing, which is about 40 words or whatever, has almost 200 pages of documents in here in our packet. My concern is while I absolutely 100% agree that we have to have fair housing, I find, as going through this, few concrete examples that I can understand. If the average person was reading through this, I'm not sure they would understand what we're trying to accomplish with this. And I know that's not necessarily you. I know that's the state of Oregon, but I just, you put in lots of language in here that, first of all, I thought we were already doing it because of the Fair Housing Act and the way that we've been conducting business in Lake Oswego. I think it's an additional frame of reference that we can refer to. But I guess if I was trying to explain to somebody what this is going to do for the population of Lake Oswego, I would have a hard time explaining it. I would just say, hey, I hope that we have fair housing policies. I think we do. I have not seen anything in the last 7 years I've been on council anything that was glaring. And if it was, I would have been the first person to say that would have been a council goal to solve. So I guess I'm fully in support of this, but I just am, there's just a lot of words that I can't exactly explain what we're going to be doing differently. And I don't know if that's not necessarily your bailiwick. You're putting the policy together and you have to do this, and this is state conforming and everything. I just think it's one of those things where if you said that we should have X or we should have Y, it would be easier to understand. This is just a little bit like make sure that you're fair in your housing policies. The other question I had, you said that you want to have, through this, equitable housing outcomes. And I guess I'd like that, if you can explain what that means.
Yeah, I guess, equitable housing outcomes are those that would provide opportunities to housing for folks that don't have the ability to access it currently. So that is something that I think, has been city policy for a long time. I think you've accurately point out that we are already kind of doing this. We are looking for ways to increase inclusive communities, to really use the language here, to foster inclusive communities. We can do that by looking at where certain types of housing is located. One way of doing that is locating affordable housing in a city like Lake Oswego, where it's generally higher income. That's one way to show that you're fostering an inclusive community. So those are the types of equitable outcomes we would be addressing here. And sort of really what we're doing is including this as a policy in our comprehensive plan so we can start to take more credit for the work that the city is already doing, to actually sit and say, hey, we're not just approving this affordable housing development, but we're approving this for these reasons, and this is a policy that we have as a city that we are complying with through the application or through the approval of this application. So if you look at all of the comprehensive plan policies, it's difficult to say exactly what they have resulted in the city. We have a bunch of different zoning districts and land use regulations and siting and design standards that are meant to be compliant with the policies in our comprehensive plan. So it's really hard to say, well, we have policy B4 here. It says that we have to preserve and enhance the habitability of existing housing through code inspection and enforcement and with housing safety programs. So we'd say we have a code enforcement, staff that helps us do that. But, in terms of, it seems like a lot of language until you actually see how it's implemented on the ground. And you see how it sort of, it doesn't have that direct impact, but it sets the stage for other very impactful actions that the city could take within that realm. So again, this isn't like a new initiative. This isn't something that we're not already doing. We are already doing it. We're required by the state and the federal government to do it. This helps sort of show that to the state and any folks that are reading our staff reports, where we go through the comprehensive plan policies and talk about whether a proposed action complies. So it's selling it a little bit better, I suppose, to the broader community.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Wendland. Thank you, Mr. Olden. Yeah, I think that, when I think about what we have done as a council these past years to affirmatively further fair housing, I think of, legalizing middle housing, reforming the parking mandates, allowing the smaller, through the middle housing, less expensive homes. We have rezoned 2 properties to allow for affordable housing. We have put public funds in to support public housing. There's a slew of things that we could point to as a city, but I think Councilor Wendland's point is really well taken, because we don't do anything as a city to talk about that or put out and say, here's what we are doing to affirmatively further fair housing. And we know how all this comes about, the Fair Housing Act, and the government said, well, the Fair Housing Act, but we need you to actually do things, cities. And so we're gonna have these affirmatively furthering fair housing policies, and we need states and cities to implement. But we know what happened. No one did anything, right? It just, we went from actual segregation to economic segregation. And nothing really until the Obama era, where they actually passed some type of thing to say, hey, we're gonna actually make you do this, but then that got repealed and then put back in place, and nothing has happened with it. So the federal government has really done nothing with regards to affirmatively furthering fair housing. So it's just come down to now the state and the local level. And so it's not, and the federal government still continues to, it's basically unenforceable. There is really there's no private, right of action in regards to affirmative for it. So that's fine, because we do have state, level laws that exist. So, but it's most important is we're doing this for our own, community. And what I'm hoping comes out of this is that communication piece. Because that is where we see, as a council, it's been great, but we have had resistance to all the rezonings that we have done. There is good education that needs to be done. I don't want to take up all the time right now, but I think it's a really good, because people say, well, what does this mean? It's like, well, we should explain what it means. We should, and there are things I think we can continue to do on a very easy educational front to further this. But I think that helps lay the groundwork of why we're here, because we have these federal laws, but they're not doing anything, Okay, Councilor Corrigan.
Great conversation. It's just such an important conversation. So I'm reading B5, understanding the importance of it more now that you've said, hey, we are taking credit for what we're already doing, and that's a really good thing. And further, it sets the stage for other actions. So I'm hoping that you can provide, trying to look around the corner to what we might need to do to be compliant with what we want to do. So would, for instance, affirmatively furthering fair housing be, for instance, placing a park near an area that doesn't already have access that maybe interpreted?
Yeah, if you were to look at if this were an applicable policy, which I'm not sure it would be, but if we were to apply this to a new park, we could then say, this helps to overcome disparities in access to community amenities. A park is a community amenity, and you're providing a park in a location where there's not sufficient park access currently. And so this policy provides an avenue for us to take credit for that when we're talking about that proposal. That's a great example.
Is there anything else like that you can think of that we would perhaps be wanting to do in order to make this work?
I think I would just say that the housing production strategy more broadly is that roadmap to what we need to do to arrive at, really affirmatively furthering fair housing. As I was saying, that's really the way that the state goes above and beyond. There are multiple ways, actually, that the state goes above and beyond what the federal government requires, but that's very unique to Oregon, the development of a housing needs analysis and a housing production strategy that specifically is intended to result in equitable housing outcomes. That's a specific sort of explicit charge from the state for that program. So, I think if you're just looking at one of those programs in isolation, you could say, let's say a new tax abatement program for an affordable housing development, whether it be, I guess we're considering one that would apply to low-income rental housing. So, you could say, well, we're considering adopting this tax exemption for these types of developments in part because we want to help foster inclusive communities and enhance housing choice for folks. Again, we're kind of wanting to open this up not just to folks that are protected under the, quote unquote, protected classes that were included in the Fair Housing Act, because there are a lot of other populations that we might want to consider for this analysis. You're considering maybe the population of folks that work in Lake Oswego that can't afford to live here. How does this impact them? How does this help overcome disparities to accessing housing and providing additional housing opportunities for that population? So we're really trying to think pretty broad, pretty big picture about how we implement this, but it's really, again, I would think of it more as a lens, less of like a new program or something different. It's something that can really help us refine what we're already doing and make sure that we're achieving the goals that we want to be achieving with the work that we're doing.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Corrigan. Councilor Boop?
Yeah, part of my question you answered it, but I just wanted to say that honestly, Mr. Olson, you are, for me, you constitute a pride for our city. Honestly, what you work, the lady who just came on public comment said that, but it's it's amazing. I like to read when I was reading it, I just learned so much, which means you put so much energy, so much research. These are things like no one can read this and try to micmac. Those are clear. And what it shows is our city has some problematic things when it comes to access, to equity, to the words that people don't like, and they have reason not to like it. DEI. When more than half of renters are rent burdened, it's a problem. If it's not a problem for people, I don't understand what they want. Like half of the renters are putting more than 30% of their income. So who can live here? And then we are having, even the schools we are building, the bond we are working for, we are building it for who? When only 1/3 of the housing have children. Who are we building the schools for? So we need to be, a better city. It means that a city that is more welcoming too. And the debate on affordability is a debate that's weaponized. It's like everything in America is weaponized. When you talk immigration, weaponization. And we talk the same thing. People are not bringing you. I read some comments, some shameful comments of, I don't want to live next to some people because I made my money. But the teachers who teach our children, most of them cannot afford to live here. Are you ashamed to live next to your teachers? Most of our police officers, they cannot afford to live here. Most of our fire marshal, most of our city workers, even someday, some councillors won't be able to live here. So it's problematic. Who are we building this city for? And those are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. It's not that because you have a house, oh, that's enough. We cannot build any housing here, any duplexes, and they're the same people who say, I want diversity, I want equity, but they're NIMBYs when it comes to, oh, we are building a duplex on First Edition, everybody on their high horses. No, we're not doing this. Keeping the character of our neighborhood. The characters of our neighborhood has some history or stories that we don't want to keep. That's the thing, and we have to. There are times when I couldn't even be here, myself. I couldn't be here to talk. At 5 o'clock, I'm out. I would be working in a house to clean it or something, but not here. We made progress. And we should be proud of that Lake Oswego is moving forward. We no longer that city that those people say the police. Our police is one of the most progressive police in Oregon. We are transparent. We show everything we are doing. All the arrests, all the pullover we do, they are public. We're not hiding anything. But we don't say that. But at the same time, we still have some people who think that they're the only one that should live in Lake Oswego. No, Lake Oswego should be a diverse city where the restaurant I go to eat, the person who works there should be able to live in here. That's how we measure progress. And by reading this, we have a roadmap, a big-time roadmap. The 209 pages that we have here are sufficient for us to move forward and to fix disparities that are in these cities. I always say we are the best city in Oregon because we are moving forward every single time. Some people didn't know that we built 100 affordable housing. Last year, we went for the inauguration. People are living there, and it's in Lake Oswego, 100 units. We are building 55 units soon 28. So we are moving forward, but we need more. We need to do more. And the only way we can do it, we know that it's not by keeping the character of our neighborhood. It won't happen. Let's face it, and it's not gonna lower your housing. Oh, my house is gonna, houses that doubled in a decade from 2012 to, it's in your analysis. So why people are afraid that when people come, my house is gonna go down. Thank you for your work. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Boop. Let's move on to let's open the public hearing. And we do have one, and thank you, Mr. Olson, don't go too far. Cynthia Johnson is joining us on Zoom, and I'll ask Ms. Hawkins to pull Ms. Johnson up.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Ms. Johnson. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you. I enjoyed the discussion. I also would like to thank Eric for his good work. I really appreciate all our staff does for us, as well as all the community members that have been involved on this issue for years, decades, some of them. So I feel like this is an important move in a direction that we need to be going, but also, I as a reminder, served on the Middle Housing Advisory Committee prior to the group that recommended this. And I just want to say that I really, in fact, Councilor Wetland, if I was going to explain what this really means, I did provide a brief written testimony, but I think it helps the city of Lake Oswego residents and, our neighbors basically stay in our community. Fair housing, as you all know, I'm disabled. And so sometimes you don't really know where the barriers are until you become part of that group. And it is a group that anybody can join. So I just wanted to say I do support this. I did watch the presentations to the Planning Commission, one of them on fair housing. I felt like the Planning Commission thoughtfully recommended to you, a slight wording change. So I think, because we all evolve into different groups. I am now a senior. I don't know where the time went, huh? So, but I also was very active in our schools as Councilor Wendland has been as well. And I think this fair housing policy is really important to a variety of a larger part of our community than we realize, age, our graduates, eventually fair housing. It's a protection, I think, of as well, but I just think it's a really important, the education. And something I don't often say except probably to Eric is my father was a developer, in Southern California. I mean, he's been gone for years. He died in 2004, but I think this is good. Good policy is good for the city, and it attracts good developers. And I saw my father work on communities like Westlake Village when it was built in Southern California, and it had very diverse housing for the time. And so I think that, it's good for the city. It's good for our residents. It's good for people like me. And I think it's an important part of the policy that people have been working on here for decades. And you guys included, as you've all mentioned, you've been working on housing in your tenure. So I definitely support this amendment. Thank you for your time on this. And I just think it's an important step. And I encourage you all to support it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Do you have any questions for me, or my time is probably up?
No, you're great. No, thank you so much for participating. We appreciate your involvement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else here who'd like to testify? Okay. And we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we'll entertain a motion on Ordinance 2967.
Move to enact Ordinance 2967.
Okay, motion been made by Councilor Afghan and seconded by Councilor Wendland. Discussion. Have any further discussion? I just wanted to mention, I think given like the complex history of exclusionary practices, both explicit, and less explicit here in LO, but also these recent kind of vast policy changes and actions that have demonstrated meaningful progress, the role of communication here is really important. And so I don't know when we're going to get into is it kind of down the road, this communications plan? I think some ideas could be, I would love to see a required training on fair housing for the neighborhood, so the recognized neighborhood associations and the unrecognized neighborhood associations, because that's who we're getting a lot of the input from. I mean, I think it's good for the council, I think it's good for planning commission and stuff as well, but they seem to be already a little more in the loop. I also think having just more general education and visibility on what the city is doing around fair housing, what it means. Like as Councilor Mboop said, he confronted a resident the other day who wasn't even aware of some of the housing developments that we've had. And I noticed, well, you know, we don't, for whatever reason, we had a ribbon of groundbreaking at Hacienda that appeared nowhere on any city anything. We're not publicizing, you know, these facts. And I think that continues like a certain narrative. And I don't know if that's intentional or unintentional, but this got me thinking about it. I thought, oh, that is kind of odd. And even on our city website, just having more clear access to services of people who may be having trouble, you know, with their cost of living or their housing costs. I mean, it's difficult to find those services and things like that just help, as Ms. Johnson was saying, helping people stay in the community by providing some of those resources and is part of that education, I think, as well, and just information sharing. So, Councilor Windland.
I just follow up
Of course.
that Lake Oswego was pretty ahead of the curve. I think it was in 1968, Mountain Park started.
Yeah.
And that is one of the most diverse housing communities really anywhere at the time. And that had all kinds of different housing for all kinds of different needs. And I think it's about 30% of Lake Oswego lives in Mountain Park. So we were trendsetters a long time ago. Anyway, thanks to Mr. Halverson and others that helped start Mountain Park. But it was bare land up there, and they had a vision. And so we're ahead of the curve.
That's right.
So we just have to stay on the curve. That's the
Stay in the
key.
curve. And it's good, I think, you know, the North Anchor development is a great example, like new development, where then we encouraged some of the workforce housing to be a part of that, where we can have developers, especially for larger developments, you know, one option, you know, of like kind of putting this into practice. I agree, we just don't want words on the paper. I mean, you know, what a waste of time, is having larger developments come in and explain how their project is further, you know, affirming fair housing. I think I found the city of Boston kind of to be the first city who was really put, and that's of course a much larger city, different, you know, dynamics and everything, but they did roll this into their zoning process and land use decision making in a more, you know, affirmative way, so they could be, there's probably pieces of that to pick out that would apply here. Councilor Afghan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The way I look at this is that we're codifying and documenting our intent and our vision and our mission in the comprehensive plan. We have been doing it. Now going forward, our planning department, our city employees are going to use that lens to make sure we continue doing it and we stay ahead of the curve. So that's my conclusion.
Thank you, Councilor Afghan, and thank you, everyone, for the good discussion. Thank you, Mr. Olson, for the good work, and the Planning Commission for going through this as well. It's been a good process. And the report's only that long because we got the whole housing production strategy in there. Mr. Olson loves to include the housing production strategy in everything he gives us. He's going to remind us that we have that plan. All right. Are you all ready to take a vote? All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Okay, information from council. Any information to share, Councilor? No? No? I wanted to ask you all, you know, we're amidst a potential, you know, catastrophic shortage in food, you know, benefits for folks, either losing them or having them, you know, cut in half. And I had talked to Ms. Phelan earlier this week about, and Ms. Bigelow, who was here earlier from the ACC, about what we could do as a city to help support these residents. And Ms. Phelan had proposed, if you all are amenable to this, some ways we might be able to locate some resources to help support food security in the town. I'm also, we're talking with Meals on Wheels organization separately, as well as Clackamas County, who has set aside some funds as well. But if you're interested in hearing the options Ms. Phelan and the team could bring back at our next meeting, would you all be on board with that? Things we could consider doing? Okay. Okay. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Do you have any updates for us? Okay. Nothing from Megan. All right. At this time, we're going to conclude the broadcast portion of the meeting, and we're going to move into executive session. I'll ask Ms. Osenak to please read the parameters for us before we do that.
The Lake Oswego City Council will now meet in an executive session. The executive session is held pursuant to the Oregon Revised Statute 192.6602D and F, and that's also in the agenda. Those subsections allow the City Council to meet privately with designated persons to conduct deliberations with the person that's designated by the body to carry on labor negotiations and to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. This is one of those executive sessions where no media are allowed to be present, but designated staff are. All other members of the audience are not allowed to attend. No decision may be made in executive session, and at the end, as the mayor said, we will adjourn.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Osenak. So this will conclude the broadcast portion of the meeting. We are going to take a recess and we'll reconvene in the side room. You want to stay in here? Oh, you want to stay in here?